Hello, amigos. Here we are and doing midterm study session part 2. So let's get to it here. So in study session 1, we talked a little bit about cells and how to run an experiment and graphing. So here, let's go over some of the stuff that happens with energy. That was our unit of energy. If you remember, a long time ago, we said all the source of energy for all of life comes from the sun, and basically that's absorbed by plants here. This is the chloroplast, and basically these cells are found on leaves, and the sunlight gets absorbed into the chloroplast where photosynthesis takes place. Now, photosynthesis is a chemical reaction that happens. So you make sure you know the formula. So I always say it's 2 over here plus. Some formulas, like I said, sometimes you'll see plus and sun, but more accurately, it's nice to have the sun over the reaction arrow like this, bam, because it's energy being input. Sunlight goes over the arrow, and then there's 2. So 2 to 2. All right, so to remember the formula, the best thing is like, all right, this is a plant doing this. A plant you have to water. So water is one of the things on the formula, H2O. You don't have to remember how to balance this formula. Just remember you just remember what the reactants are. The reactants, and these are the products. These are the products. So a plant needs water. It also needs to breathe, and plants do not breathe oxygen. They breathe CO2. So these are the 2 things that plants need. Then they need sunlight, so they need 3 things. And then the whole goal is to make glucose. And so for the midterm, just be ready to know that it's glucose. Again, just like we mentioned in the last video, make sure you know that glucose is a carb, that glucose is hexagon shaped, that glucose is a monosaccharide. And so this is C6H12O6. Okay, that's glucose. And then this is oxygen, which is waste. And so that's photosynthesis. And this one's a little easier to remember than cellular respiration, because you kind of remember, what do I need for plants to get energy? What do I need to take care of a plant? You got to give them sun, you got to give them water, and they have to breathe. Okay? Now what's cool is cellular respiration is kind of the same thing, but backwards. So this time we're going to do 2. And then an arrow for the product. And actually, it's 3 this time. It's 3. Just like that. Plus, plus, plus. Okay. So these 2 in photosynthesis are actually what is on this side. So our cells, and by the way, plants have mitochondria too, if you notice. This is a plant cell with mitochondria. But this is us, and here, this is where this is happening. So if you want to know where cellular respiration is taking place, it's in the mitochondria. So cellular respiration, we need glucose. So I'll write it real small there, C6H12O6. And we breathe. There it is right there, O2. And the whole point, the end of the story, is for us to make ATP. That is the product we're trying to make. Okay, and the other 2 things, they're here. The other 2 things are on the other side of the photosynthesis formula. So that'll help you remember what's written there. So we breathe out CO2 as waste, and water is also produced in this reaction. Okay, so that's cellular respiration. Now just to refresh, ATP, remember, was the 3 phosphates bonded together. And when this breaks off, it becomes ADP, and the D stands for di, which means 2 in science. And the T in ATP stands for triphosphate. Okay, so then these 2, we basically then eat to recharge our ATP. Okay, so that is a little bit about energy and how we get energy there. One other refresher really quick, we talked about energy is enzymes. We talked to enzymes sort of help you out. Enzymes, remember, were shape specific. So you have some kind of substrate or something that needs to be broken up, and this is your enzyme. And the way enzymes work, they work to speed up reactions by sort of breaking up something into something that's bonded together, they can break it up really quickly over and over and over again. Okay, so we talked about enzymes a little bit during the energy lesson that we had. Okay. Let's see, this is a little out of order. I'll go back in a second. Digestive system. So let's talk a little bit about the body systems. Some of the stuff we talked about. Mechanical, chemical digestion happens in the mouth, happens in the stomach. Okay, epiglottis. Epiglottis. Remember the function of the epiglottis. The epiglottis is the flap that closes your trachea. So the trachea is the tube that's in front of your esophagus. And so know your diagrams, know how to label stuff. So esophagus, this is the stomach, small intestine, large intestine. There's no rectum, no appendix. We don't care about that. Know the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas is important. Yeah, good. So these are like the main ones to know. Don't worry about teeth and shape of teeth. That was very nitpicky. The enzymes, the one in the mouth was amylase. And the one in the stomach was pepsin. Okay. What else? Let's see. Peristalsis. Peristalsis was the muscle contractions that move food down. Functions. Small intestine absorbs nutrients. Okay, and this is where we find the villi, which were those little finger-like projections along the wall of your small intestine. Large intestine absorbs water. Liver makes bile. Gallbladder, remember, stores bile. And bile was the solution that breaks up fats. So that's makes bile, stores bile. Pancreas. Remember the pancreas lowers blood sugar? Oh, I'll talk about this stuff on this slide. Let me talk about that stuff here. That's a lot closer. So when you have a diagram, the stomach is usually in the way of the pancreas. So this one, the stomach is removed. So you can see the pancreas here. And the pancreas has a couple of jobs. One of them is it lowers blood sugar. And it does that with which hormone? Huh? What'd you say? Insulin, correct. So if you had a big meal, your pancreas releases insulin to lower your blood sugar. If you haven't eaten in a while, your pancreas, remember, releases, if you have high blood sugar, we release glucagon. And glucagon was the hormone that raises blood sugar. Okay, you get that? I should probably put insulin lowers blood sugar. Cool. So make sure you know the hormones and what they do. Now, there's two ways, if you remember, that the pancreas, or that insulin lowers blood sugar. There's two things it does. The first thing is it sort of tells your cells what to do. So it tells your cells to intake glucose. Diabetes, by the way, is not on the midterm, but we did talk about that during then. And the other way it lowers blood sugar is if there's a lot of glucose in your blood, the excess glucose converts to glycogen. And this is kind of like our starch. Plants take glucose and make starch to store it. We take glucose and make glycogen. So this right here, remember, is a polymer, or is a polysaccharide. Saccharide, to be exact, okay? So glycogen is a big, long chain of hexagons like this. So is starch. So is chitin. If you remember, chitin was the shell of bugs. Chitin. Polysaccharide. So that's polysaccharide. This is a monosaccharide. So that's what the pancreas does, one of the jobs the pancreas does. All right, so you got all that down, right? Pancreas, insulin, glucagon. It's all on your review sheet as well. Okay, next. The liver, for our story, stores glycogen and makes bile. The gallbladder stores, like we said before, stores bile. Now all this stuff, these ducts right here, ducts, not like quack quack duck. Those are tubes. They empty out into the duodenum or duodenum. So this is basically a fancy name for the first section of the small intestine. Okay, because the small intestine is actually broken up into 3 sections. We mostly talked about this first one. And this is where all them juices get emptied out. Oh, I forgot one other thing the pancreas does. That just reminded me there because, remember, the stomach is here. And the stomach is emptying out acids that could burn you. So one of the jobs is the pancreas neutralizes. Remember, it neutralizes the stomach acids here in the duodenum. Okay? So that was another job of the pancreas. Cool, so that's pretty much digestive. Let's talk about the heart a little bit. Really, the main thing we want you to know in bio is like, where's the blood going? Oxygen, no oxygen, where's it coming from? So the circulation. For that, don't worry about the chambers so much. We kind of more worry about these guys right here. We'll do that one, this one, and this one. Okay? This is the same thing, by the way, these two. So these are veins. This is the vena cava. This is the aorta. This is the pulmonary. Let's see, where's it going? It's going out. So that means it's going away from the heart. This is the pulmonary artery. And this one is going back to the heart, remember? Or back to the heart. So this is the pulmonary vein. All right, so first thing is make sure you know the direction of blood so that this is entering the heart here. But where's it coming from? And why is it going to the heart? So this right here is deoxygenated blood. And that means it's totally filled, deoxygenated blood. This is totally filled with CO2. And the reason is because your body used it up. Your cells did cellular respiration and the waste gets put into your blood, and so it's totally coming back. It's got to be pumped to the heart so that it could be pumped to the lungs. Okay? So it's kind of like the blood has to check in here into the heart before it gets pumped here, the pulmonary artery. Remember, we taught you pulmonary means lungs in a lot of languages. Spanish, Italian, French. Pulmon, that means lungs. So this is going away from the heart to the lungs to get oxygen. Okay? Once it gets oxygen, it comes back from the lungs. Remember, veins are vessels that come back to the heart. So this is going to the heart from the lungs. That's the pulmonary vein. Separate these two. Pulmonary arteries to get oxygen. This is going to the lungs, just so you know that. All right, so it comes back, goes down here, and then boom, gets shot out to your head because you want to send oxygen to your head. Or this guy actually wraps around and comes out over here at the bottom of the heart. And there's O2 in there too. So this is oxygenated blood. So the aorta is an artery. It's an artery because it's sending O2 filled blood, oxygenated blood to everywhere in your body. Okay? So, 2 types of circulation. Let me erase this mess. Basically, 2 types of circulation if you're looking at the heart. So pretty much, if you're talking about the lungs, oh yeah, I'm drawing. There we go, little trachea right there. basically circulation out of this guy, okay, that's the pulmonary artery, into your lungs, and going back here, into your lungs, oops, going back here, is called pulmonary circulation. This is circulation that's going from the heart to the lungs to the heart. Okay, that's pulmonary circulation, and that's easy to remember because there's that word again, pulmon. Now, circulation that is going, let's draw your body here. You know, oh, you're so cute with your feet and your hands. Okay. Your cells in your entire body are using up oxygen. So basically, fresh blood needs to be sent to them. So that goes from the aorta to all your cells, goes everywhere through your body. And when it's dirty, it comes back through the vena cava. Okay? Same thing, clean blood goes everywhere, goes to your head, you use it up, boom, and comes back down the vena cava. This is called systemic circulation. And that's circulation from the heart to all the body cells and goes back to the heart. Okay, so it's O2 blood to the cells and comes back as CO2. Okay, so that's systemic circulation. Flow through the body. Yes. Respiratory system, just know the main player in the more drawing. The main player in the respiratory system is the end. This is the alveoli. And what's cool about this is where diffusion takes place. So remember, this is just a bunch of grapes. And if we they're just like a bunch of grapes. And if we look at one here, let's just take this one right here, you would totally see that this little thin layer, this is where your air comes in. This little thin layer, this is a capillary. And the capillary is a tiny, tiny blood vessel. But we have diffusion. That's the main thing to know, is that our oxygen diffuses right in. When you breathe in, yeah, you totally fill up with air, and that diffuses into your blood. Okay, and CO2 diffuses out because it builds up in your blood. Cool? Cool. So that's the main one to know for the respiratory system. Trachea, all the other stuff, not really. So I would just know the alveoli, the site of diffusion. Okay. Osmosis. Basically, we talked about how if cells are thrown into a solution of salt or some kind of solution that's more concentrated on the outside, they will shrink because water from the cell will always move to where there's more stuff. And so that shrinks the cell. Same thing as if you threw remember a freshwater fish, if you threw it into salty environment, well, the cells in this fish would shrink because this fish would completely be losing water to its environment. And so this fish needs to, remember, drink all the time because he's thirsty. And the same thing we said about if you threw a saltwater fish that has a higher concentration of stuff inside into fresh water, well, then water totally will go in to that fish. Okay, actually just a freshwater fish too, but this fish needs to pee all the time. Okay? So that was the thing with osmosis. Just know that if the concentration of the little dots or whatever's in the water, dissolved in the water, is greater, that's where water's going to move. Okay? It's osmosis. And diffusion. Diffusion, we talk how it's like the spreading of molecules. So you start off with a high concentration, like a drop of food coloring, and that needs to spread. The molecules spread. Now, how that's related to biology is that cells can actually have stuff that goes through their membrane. Okay, so this is inside the cell, and this is outside the cell. So if something's tiny enough, just like this little drop of food coloring, this little concentrated stuff, it can spread and it can diffuse right into the cell. Now remember, it sort of stops when both sides are equal. Okay, so that's high to low. That's how we talked about diffusion. Now the opposite is active transport. And that's kind of like, you know what? There's a high concentration of stuff on the outside like this, but the cell needs to boot these two guys. It needs to boot them out. So this is going against the grain. This was the train in Japan. And the main thing you need to know is that we use energy for that. Okay, energy must be used to pump this stuff out. And that's active transport. Active transport. Cool beans. What else? What else? This. I just found this picture really quick just so you can remember what the organic molecules look like. This is a hexagon, and so we know it's either glucose. This actually is not glucose, if you remember the name of the molecule, but we won't hurt you on that. If you know it's a hexagon, you can say glucose. You can say it's a monosaccharide. You can say this is a carbohydrate. Okay. This is a protein. You can also say this is composed of amino acids. You could say it's a polymer because that's a really long chain of amino acids. This is a phospholipid bilayer. Phospholipid bilayer, or bilayer. It's also the cell membrane. But this is lipids. And this is carb. This could be starch, or like I said before, glycogen, or it could be chitin. Chitin is spelled like this. This is the shell of roaches, chitin. Cool, cool, cool. And this is what I was explaining before. Remember our little graph on how to, like if you have high blood sugar, it makes the pancreas make insulin, and insulin does two things. One, it makes your excess glucose turn into glycogen, right? And then it also makes your cells like eat up the sugar, and that lowers your blood sugar, okay? And then the other thing that happens is if you have low blood sugar, it makes your pancreas make glucagon. And glucagon, actually what it does is the opposite. It takes glycogen, which I wrote over here before, and breaks it up back into glucose, and that raises your blood sugar, okay? What else? This is dehydration synthesis. You don't need to know that. This is triglycerides. So that's pretty cool. Triglycerides, remember, if they're bent, they're liquid at room temperature. If they're straight, they're solid and unhealthy. Naming ionic compounds, I did that in the first video, but this would be sodium nitride. And if you look up the charge, sodium's and this guy is N3 minus. So this would be Na3 N nothing, because we crisscrossed, and we call this sodium nitride. Okay. What else? We did that in the first video, and that's pretty much it. Okay. Oh, come on in. That's fine. All right. Good luck, guys.